Hi everyone, I just wanted to do a quick video with some tips on how to look like you know what you're doing when you're leading a horse around on a rope halter. So tip number one, and this is for safety, you need to hold your lead rope, not like this all looped around your hand, because if they pull, that's going to tighten up around your hand and you could get caught and drug or hurt. So instead, you need to, wrap it back and forth like this. Just loop it back and forth. And that way, if it does pull, it will, hopefully it'll have a good grip on it. But if it was really bad, it would just slide out of your hand and then you wouldn't get caught up on it. A second one is when you're leading the horse, you really don't have to micromanage them because it can be a little claustrophobic. If you're holding them really tight up close to their chin like this, and they can't look side to side at all, they can't investigate a noise they hear, they can't dip their head down a little or lift it up. So they're going to inherently be more anxious if you're kind of clenching them up here like this. So one benefit is for them, and then the other is, especially if there was a snap on your lead rope, like it clicked or clipped at the top onto the halter, you could accidentally undo it with your hand, or your fingers could get stuck in the metal parts of the clasp. So instead of having your vice grip up here, you can just walk them on a loose lead like this, just like this. And I can still direct her where I want to go with this much slack. But if I needed to react to anything with it like this, you can just go like that. Real fast movement, slide your hand up if you need to. All right, and the next thing is around having some extra tail on your rope halter. So after you tie your knot, if you do have extra length on the tail, like this, turn to the side, you could tuck that right in to the throat latch. Come back up here. Come here. Good girl. All right. Ooh. So you can just, if you do have some extra length on the tail of your rope halter, you can just tuck that into the throat latch, which will prevent it from swinging around, hitting them on the side of the head or hitting them on the neck or hitting you while you're working with them. So it's just an annoyance. I kind of learned that one the hard way, lunging her and she's tossing her head, and I kind of look over and I just see the tail loose and hitting her on the side of the head. So no wonder she was tossing her head, right? So that's one more tip. And then another one, and this is also safety related, is not putting your hand under any part of the halter while walking. So especially if you have the type of lead rope that just clips on and off rather than is tied on like this, it might be tempting to leave it off and then just try to lead them around by holding onto the side of their halter. But that's also really dangerous. If they pull away, you could get stuck and hung up. And it's not particularly comfortable for them, because if you're adding pressure by pulling under this side of the halter, it's applying pressure on the other side. You see she turned her head, right? Just that little pressure made her turn. And then the last thing that I wanted to share is the mechanics of the rope halter. So when you're using it, you're aware of how it's applying pressure to their face, because that really should affect how you decide to use it, or explain if they're doing something that you don't want them to be doing. It could just be you're using the rope halter wrong. So there's knots on either side on this halter, which means applying pressure to the sides of their face when you pull one way or the other. There's the nose band on top of their nose, which means pulling back would then put pressure to their nose to go backward. There's knots on the sides up here. So again, pressure on the side if you're pulling one way or the other. And then the top of the halter that goes right over here behind their ears, it goes over their head, applies pressure to the pole, or the, I know, or the top of their head. So if I pull down, there's not only pressure being applied to her nose, but there's also pressure being applied to the top of her head. So again, if your horse is doing something that doesn't make sense to you, you need to understand the mechanics here. So do they have hair caught under the top, if you can see it, if they have hair caught under the top of the halter right here, and so it's pulling their hair. Well, because when you're pulling down to get their head to go down, it's not just putting pressure on their nose, right? It's putting pressure up here. So just a few things to think about when you're using a rope halter. Thanks so much. Good girl, Turtle. Good girl.